by accepting nomination of the Orange Democratic Movement to run as president for the 5th time, I believe my brother Raila Odinga has committed an irreparable material breach of this agreement. Now that's a legal term defined, I quote, irreparable material breach shall mean a repudiation, reneging, a violation, or an ouster in any way of any of the articles of the agreement.
Wow. So that is what we had this week, that Wiper leader Kalonzo Musyoka finally spilling the beans. He said this is what they agreed in 2017 in April, in the run-up to the election that we had in August of that year. And he basically says, you know, we had a deal that he was to serve 1 term, and then he emphasized something, Yvonne, that this was supposed to obtain, whether they won the election or not. That's in the preamble somewhere before you come now to the articles themselves. But very interesting agreement, and we'll come to the substance of it in a moment. But this coming almost out of the blue. In fact, I heard someone say that it's almost as if he detonated a bomb on the street, because there are all manner of conversations going on about Oka, Azimio, and suddenly, boom, there is this whole thing of the deal. So, like you said, it came at an interesting time when the One Kenya Alliance is, first of all, considering a deal amongst themselves. They signed what they called, what was it, the deed of assignment first, and then we're yet to now, formalize that and present that to the registrar of political parties. Deed of cooperation, then now they can go to the coalition. Okay, so the deal before the deal before the deal. Yeah. Okay, yeah, thanks for that. Sometimes your head can spin just trying to keep up. So it comes at a time when, One Kenya Alliance is saying, look, we're going in this together as part of what, Kalonzo had talked about being a 3-legged stool. And the 3-legged stool was having one of the legs being One Kenya Alliance. And then he says that, no, you know what, for this to work, then Raila Odinga should support me. And so I think it presented an awkward moment for the One Kenya Alliance members who have other principles that perhaps might want to be part of this. And then he goes ahead and issues a personal statement. I believe they then had a meeting the day after that. Yesterday. Yes, that was yesterday, to, then clarify around some of the issues. But it's really about raising the stakes, and it's really about betrayal. And you can tell, we've said around this table that betrayal is the currency of our politics. And for Kalonzo Musyoka, this would not be the first time that he is, experiencing this sort of betrayal. Remember in 2007, apparently there was a deal that if he supported him, remember right after, the fallout from, that election, it was that, he would support President Uhuru Kenyatta, so that then, President Kibaki at the time, who would then support him in the 2013 election. That didn't happen. And then, of course, 2013, 2017, and Accord and NASA. And so what you're seeing now is an attempt by Kalonzo Musyoka, 1, to up the stakes, 2, also just a fight for identity in terms of a single identity. This is who I am. So I might be in One Kenya Alliance, but I am also Kalonzo Musyoka. And then you've got his identity in the midst of 2 other, big, strong coalitions. So you've got the Kenya Kwanza on one end and the Azimio la Umoja on the other. And so this is where it is, trying to find a space for yourself that says, I am here and I am the one that, is needed on either side. To what extent that will happen, considering, again, remember, he's also trying to get into Azimio la Umoja through President Uhuru Kenyatta, obviously because of the betrayal, perceived betrayal by Raila Odinga. And so this is upping the stakes as the conversation goes on and as the talks go on. But it really does leave One Kenya Alliance in a rather tough space.
Joe, time is also of essence. But at the same time, the Political Parties Amendment Act that was passed by Parliament late last year, early this year, has provided a very interesting scenario in terms of coalition making and building. You see, initially we had loose agreements gentleman agreements that would be easily broken. Now you're being required by law to submit a coalition agreement to the Register of Political Parties at least 120 days to the general election. And it should be watertight in such a way that if any of the parties renege on the agreement, there are legal consequences to it. So before you sign any agreement, you must be very, very sure of what you're getting into, who you are getting into with, and what is at stake. I would think at this point, the Wiper leader has realized his value, so to say, in terms of votes. He comes from a region, 3 counties of Machakos, Makueni, and Kitui, that have a combined voter population of about 1.7 million. That's a sizable number of votes, especially in a presidential race that looks like it will be closely contested. So whichever side he goes will have an advantage. But the question is, what are the terms of any arrangement that he goes into? I see a scenario where he's relooking at the 2013, 2017 scenarios and how he related with the ODM leader, then under CORD, and the ODM leader, then under NASA. Were there issues that were raised about the 2 coalitions? Yes. And more prominently, we all remember that long drawn contest over sharing of resources coming from the Political Parties Fund. The Political Parties Amendment Act tried to change that scenario, how resources are shared and how those terms of agreement are made. So I would think what Kalonzo is trying to do is to up his stakes, but also cushion himself, insulate himself in the event that there is a fallout within any coalition that he joins, and particularly the Azimio one. Then he has a recourse, a legal recourse, like this is what we agreed, this is what is due to me and my party.
But in a sense, also Kalonzo is in an interesting place, because we have these 2 formations. They are almost it's almost as if these are the 2 formations that one has to be part of either way. I mean, the space for the so-called third force is increasingly very constricted, so much so that, in a sense, whatever he does, he has to join something, even if there are people who believe that he's a serious kingmaker in that regard. But he's not really going there to dictate the terms. That is where he finds himself, and I think it is a reason why he is probably going to these extraordinary lengths, because you aim for, what is that thing, Linus, about aiming for the sun so that you land on, because I mean,
aim at the stars.
Who around this table can actually believe, or in this country for that matter, that Kalonzo would go to Azimio and then suddenly Raila Odinga steps back and say, my brother Steve, take this mantle? It's not going to happen.
You see, Joe, and you talk of aiming, there's a greater dilemma when you shoot first and then aim later, which is unfortunately what seems to be happening here. I find a great problem in the timing of Kalonzo Musyoka's latest energy to claim a place on the top of the ticket of whatever formation will come up. I feel he's left it rather late. Left it rather late in one aspect. Remember, Raila Odinga already hit the ground some time back. And secondly, when this handshake started taking the shape of a political outfit, Kalonzo was part of the State House meetings. Yeah. And wasn't this the place to say, hey, Mr. President, you know, this chap here told me I'm the one this time. So whatever we are working on here, I should be the candidate. He's left it so late that it's going to be almost, quite frankly, almost a miracle that this can be reversed. And I would say the same of the team that is in Kenya Kwanza. DP William Ruto has been on the campaign trail basically for the last 8 years. How do you come straight from a meeting in Bomas and then claim, okay, I can be the candidate. I think it's a bit too late to dislodge William Ruto in the Kenya Kwanza side and to dislodge Raila Odinga in the Azimio side. Oh, by the way, in my village they say Azimio.
There's no Z.
Even my place.
So if a bit of that came out,
my place they say we don't have said.
yeah, we are. For the yes, indeed, we don't have said.
You see, Joe, I look at it this way. Whichever way Kalonzo goes, he realizes the value that he brings to either side. And like any negotiator would do, he's trying to use all the ammunition in his side to his favor. Unleashing this agreement, whether it will give him an advantage or not, is the next question. But all the same, he knew there was an agreement that was not out there in the public, but he unleashed it altogether. Whether it will give him an advantage or not is not the pertinent question for now. But there are some concessions that have already been made, silently though. Remember, it was initially Azimio. Now it has moved to Azimio One Kenya Alliance. So I would think that is a concession that has been made to accommodate him insofar as this coalition agreement is concerned. And then number two, he was nominated by the Wiper team as its presidential candidate. Raila Odinga was nominated by his party, ODM, as the presidential candidate. One Kenya Alliance is yet to name its presidential candidate. If you're to look at it as the three-legged that Kalonzo is talking about, the One Kenya Alliance is one part of the leg, is one leg, Jubilee is the other leg, and then ODM is the other leg. So we have two scenarios. Jubilee says it has no presidential candidate, but will support the Azimio candidate. And you could hear a majority of the Jubilee leaders who spoke during the NDC, they were saying they are supporting Raila Odinga. On the other hand, the ODM team has endorsed Raila Odinga. So will Kalonzo be named the One Kenya Alliance presidential candidate? Most likely. Because, I mean, you're talking about the rest, Gideon Moi, Martha Karua, and Cyrus Jirongo. Most likely. It's a no-brainer. He's likely to be the presidential candidate of One Kenya Alliance. So you will have a scenario where two candidates, two aspirants who have been endorsed to vie for the presidency by ODM, Raila Odinga, One Kenya Alliance, most likely Kalonzo Musyoka, they are now going to a negotiating table. You are a presidential contender nominated by your party or your coalition, and here you are also a presidential candidate nominated by your party. I see a scenario where probably Kalonzo is also trying to do a gamble, like, if I don't get number one, I'll certainly get number two. That introduces another dynamic, because even as we speak now, there are people in Azimio who are saying, hapo juu mjipange, but for number two, there is also a race, an equal contest for number two, not just in Azimio, but also in Kenya Kwanza. So you're introducing quite some dynamics there. So what if those who are saying they want the number two in Azimio say, no, you finish each other up juu for number one, allow us to deal with ourselves here for number two, and then we have a pair. And
that's assuming that the other OCA principles are not talking because with the Azimio people. You know, that's how it happens.
Yep.
Everyone has
crunch
their
time.
own.
When something is taking too long, you might find that there are other back channels that are wide open right now. Linus?
I mean, you're describing, and I want to just agree with you. And Francis, it should be really found disturbing that this is how we get leaders. It's personal discussions and personal deals. You saw the deal between Raila Odinga and Kalonzo Musyoka. You know, is this really how democracy works? You see these formations coming up and people calling themselves principals. And by principals, they are basically one step away from the presidency. No nominations, no primaries, no public participation, if I could put it that way. But again, that being the case, that's how we've gotten presidents since 2002 anyway. Coalitions, last-minute coalitions, there is a whole question of how do you strategize and how do you position yourself in the entire scheme of things. I have not forgotten in 2012, it was actually, I laugh about this, because I remember DP William Ruto, who was then, I think, member of parliament and cabinet minister, positioned himself as a ready running mate for whoever it is that wants to to strike a deal with him. So whether it was going to be Raila or Uhuru, he was the second position in that conversation is already taken. Now that is strategy. And that is a plan that seems not to have come through when it comes to how Kalonzo Musyoka has been approaching this 2022 elections. And you know, these succession intrigues are not really new. You can go as far back as Mzee Kenyatta, where you have people who are positioning. Because basically we know very well that we don't source our leadership from the grassroots. No, there isn't an organized step-by-step way of getting a president. And if you want to know how true that is, just look at the story of President Uhuru Kenyatta. Really, we make leaders here are made. And it's about how you position yourself. In the 70s, you had Dr. Njoroge Mungai from your county, who really believed is going to be president, whatever noise there is out there. And you know, they'll be in this silent competition with the likes of Dr. Julius Gikonyo Kianu, because we know that it's about what does the boss say, what does the top say. And look at how Kalonzo Musyoka, Raila Odinga, and William Ruto have all been quoting Uhuru Kenyatta, because this is how we create leaders. So that direct thing of trying to go to the people to make you president, I think there are a number of people, very good people in this country, who have tried that, even in lower races like parliamentary, and the results have always turned out quite surprising.
Yeah, I mean, I just wanted to add, you know, on the basis of you know, these secret deals that somehow come out to light. A lot of what we saw happening this week, you know, takes me back to, again, 2007. So Kibaki reaches out to Kalonzo to show up his legitimacy. And remember, this was at the height of the 2007-2008 political post-election violence. And there were, again, secret talks, right? So you had Kibaki and his representatives. I believe Amos Kimunya, I think, was one of the members of this supposed talk. David Musila and Mudama representing Kalonzo. And if you recall, afterwards, you know, the beans were spilled, and we're told that part of the agreement was that Kalonzo would get some cabinet slots, and that President Kibaki would agree to support him in 2013. So they go on and form an alliance, and there's a secret document, and there's private discussions and an agreement. And then what happens? 2013, you know, ICC comes along, it's looming large, and Kalonzo suddenly, who'd served as, you know, vice president, was now, you know, out in the cold, or rather on, you know, on the other side with Raila. And again, we saw again details of what these private discussions were, although of course nobody really confirms it, coming to light. So that's one thing that I find that's interesting, and just history repeating itself, particularly with what we've seen this week. But even when you talk about history, I mean, like we're saying about, you know, politics of betrayal, isn't this the same thing that happened with Musalia Mudavadi and President Uhuru Kenyatta? You know, anybody remember what was said, that he backed Uhuru Kenyatta in 2002, and there was some reciprocity that was expected, and then of course come 2012 when you know, Uhuru Kenyatta was supposedly supposed to cede ground for Musalia Mudavadi, and then he came out and said, no, it was Madimoni, or was it dark forces, or whatever we had. And take a look at NASA. There was another agreement there. That MOU was broken right after the election, you know, even with cabinet slots not being shared the way it had been agreed. So this is who we are as a country. And so that's why you would understand everybody just trying to sort of prop themselves up as, you know, the most visible thing. One last thing about Kalonzo Musyoka, I think things are a little different. So even in the One Kenya Alliance, he would be deemed to be the most senior politician, right? Has served as vice president, foreign affairs minister. But then there's also been that push from the three governors, of Kitui, Makueni, and Machakos, who are now moving towards, Azimio. And at a time when national stature was something that was important in terms of leading your people, we now have devolution. So you've got governors, some of whom, at least two of whom, have served 2 terms, and so have quite a bigger say at the local level. That's in Makueni and in Machakos. For Ngilu, it's the 1 term in Kitui. And so where does Kalonzo Musyoka find himself with leading his people? Does the national stature still have as much weight as it did now with devolution and with certain governors pushing him towards Azimio? So then you would understand why there's this fight for, prominence and propping oneself.
Yeah,
Yep.
So I
There's something, sorry, Francis.
Okay.
Let me just follow up on something Yvonne mentions there about national stature, because I think national stature has actually suffered the more we go into this coalition politics, because essentially what they've become is this a coalition of regions, coalition between tribes. And so what that has done is we have seen leaders investing more in building the tribal base, the regional base, so that it gives them the weight to go to the national table. And here is the dilemma. I don't know, maybe this is the last election that we'll have leaders who can have a cross national appeal, because everybody will now then decide to invest in just your tribe and then maybe the region. And what this unfortunately makes our country look like, it very much reminds me of South Africa pre the 1994 election, because they had something called tribal homelands. And there's a particular leader that was particularly ridiculous called Lucas Mangope, the president of Botswana. Joe, you might remember those difficult names. And this was the guy who, he settled in the comfort of the tribal homeland, to the point that he's not interested in the all race elections. Remember, he actually boycotted the election. And I'm seeing that because we are running away from ideology-based, political party-based kind of ways of generating leadership, then what we're going to have are these tribal homelands where tribal chiefs will then sit around and decide the fate of the country. Look at how Azimio, look at how Kenya Kwanza, and look at how Oka, they all try to tell you we have this lineup from across the country, not on merit, but they'll tell you, no, we have people from the different regions. I really hope this is the last election we're going to do this way.
And it is usually camouflaged or clothed in something they call face of Kenya. And just before you come in, Francis, I got intrigued as you were talking about the tribal homelands and all of that. I was intrigued by, I think this is the last article on this
agreement.
Yes, Roman 6, and it says both H in this case is Raila Odinga, and Q, Kalonzo Musyoka, agreed to publicly address rallies throughout the country, and especially in Nyanza, Western, Eastern, Rift Valley, and Coast regions, to explain this pact to the people. So what happens? Are there no people in Central and Upper Eastern and all of these things? I mean, there's a very interesting thing there. Then they say, this will assure that the pact is not a private understanding between H and Q, but a social contract between H and Q on the one hand, and the people of Kenya on the other.
See,
I mean, where are the people of Kenya?
See, Joe, choreography. Choreography. I wish
but where did they address those rallies to tell us? I don't know.
I don't think that happened.
But be it as it may, proper choreography. And you see, these coalitions are rarely about the people. They are largely about leaders. And I wish you can read just there above. There are certain articles that says, after 3 years, Principal H will delegate a substantial amount of
national duties to Principal
Q.
And largely concentrate on international duties.
The next one. The next one says
You don't tell anyone.
Both H and Q agree that the delegation of substantial national duties to Q by H after 3 years shall not be made public as part of the signed agreement.
See now, so it's a secret deal, but then introduces the very article that, Joe, you've read, that we will now then go out there
And tell
the people, explain to them that this is a social contract. Social contract on whose behalf? So that tells you the kind of choreography we're talking about.
Who sent you?
And who sent you. The kind of choreography you talk about in this coalition making. You see now, it's even more interesting this time. Why? Because there are two key positions that are being contested. The president and the running mate. That is the deputy president. So you are either or, you know, the first position or the second position. You remember the furor that was raised by Madeira MP Rigathi Gachagua here in this very studio on Daybreak with Sam Gituko, when he said when Musalia and Wetangula joined Kenya Kwanza with the deputy president, the position of running mate is a sure bet for Mount Kenya region. And you saw the kind of reaction from ANC that, hey, not yet. So that tells you that there are expectations.
Actually, they said we have not even agreed on the presidency.
See now. So it tells you that there are certain expectations either way. And I would say this, look to what is going to happen when either of the team nominates a running mate. Call it the running mate headache. Because whichever choice you make, it will have consequences. If, for example, the Azimio One Kenya Alliance says it is Raila Kalonzo or Kalonzo Raila, whichever way you look at it, there will be repercussions politically. If the deputy president says it is, let's say, Ruto Musalia or Musalia Ruto, or Ruto somebody from Mount Kenya or from Coast or whichever region, there will be certain consequences because there will be a discussion too. These were the expectations. They have not been met. Do you still stay there with the unmet expectations, or do you move on? So I would think they are it's a little too early. Quite a number of things are likely to happen. And particularly once the nominations are conducted next month, and then thereafter, the naming of the running mate for each of the two main coalitions as it stands now, not forgetting that there are other presidential contenders, Ruben Kigame, J.B. Muturi, Mwangi wa Iria, and the rest who have tokelezea. Or even Wajakoya, yeah.
What I still can't get out of my head is H and Q.
Yeah.
I know that was a high drama. I wonder why the need to do that.
Why not A and B?
Yeah.
Or C and
okay.
D?
We need to finish. Linus, you are looking at me in a manner likely to suggest that you have one final point.
No, I don't have a final point, but now that you give me the opportunity to, I'll just add to what Francis was talking about. And in terms of the political agreements, we have a very consistent story. None of them have been kept except the TNA URP one in 2013. Because they had agreed to split government 50-50. I think that happened. And that's why there are many problems. That it's a continuation of that split. The rest of the time, even the very beautiful signatures you've seen there, that have been ignored. In 2002, remember there was something called the summit that sat President Kibaki, sat Raila Odinga, Mudia Wori, Wamalwa, Ngilu.
Yeah.
And the story is told that, you know, when the guys of the summit went to State House after the victory of Kibaki, they were told by the president's handlers that, the chairman of the summit, remember, was Mudia Wori. And they said that is a ridiculous arrangement because how can the president be a member of an organ that is not chairing, is the senior most person. And then they said, also that's an illegal outfit, basically. So what are you talking about? So among the things that will happen, Francis, is tears.
Yeah, and those tears will also include a scenario where most likely Kalonzo will be told there is an agreement by a defunct body called NASA.
No, he has already been told that, and Musalia Mudavadi was astonished, or so he said, that these two people went behind his back to sign some secret
But
deal.
see, he in town.
To sign some secret deal. He's only discovering now after he's gone to Kenya.
Welcome
Kwanza.
to Kenya.
Kanairo.
Yes.
Interesting. Let's finish this, and Yvonne's take is first off the